Now we've rigged up our tail. The next thing I want to do is work on rigging the arm. But before I do that, I'm going to scroll down and take a look at the tail. And we can see that there are different bone layers that are here. And this is what they're called by default. So what I want to do is come in this and change the name. So just make that tailbone. And make tailbone on the very second part of that as well. And I'll go ahead and let's make sure that we've turned off our solo here. And let's collapse this layer. Now, the reason we want to go in and make sure we change the names of our layers is every time we add a bone deformation to this character, it's going to simply call it by default bone. And it'll be bone 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on and so on. So because we're doing nothing but bone deformers for the WereFoot, there are going to be a lot of them. So we want to make sure we're labeling everything correct. So what I want to work on now is show you how we're going to do the arm. So go ahead and select this top part of the arm here. And I'll go to my rigging tool. Now, this is going to be one of the exceptions because this arm is actually bent. And instead of it being just on one layer, it is segmented. So we have the upper arm, the forearm, as well as the hand or paw. Now we're in the rigging mode, but we have the tail that seems to be highlighted. So in order to change this, I'm going to go up here. So I'm going to click this to show the selected deformer and not any other deformer. Okay, so now I'll come up here to the shoulder. I'm going to click once, and that's going to be my pivot. I'll click once right at about the elbow. And here's one of the exceptions to the rule where I'm actually going to draw out this bone. It's not going to be drawn straight out. I'm going to follow where the arm is actually drawn initially. So that's going to be the forearm, and then last but not least, the hand. Okay, and the next thing I'll do is I'll make sure I come here and adjust my articulator. And if you look at where the arrows are pointing, I know where I need to drag. So I'm going to make this just a little bit larger. And find the one for the wrist as well. Make that just a little bit large, just so it touches the outsides of the wrist. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I call this the robo arm. All right, so we've got the arm there. So what we need is the rest of the pieces to be part of the articulation. Because if we go down to our transform right now and try to rotate any of this, we don't see anything moving. We don't see the hand moving at all. So I'm going to undo that. Command Z. And what I want to do is simply grab my forearm, and this is the robot forearm, and make sure it's part of the bone articulation, and I'll do the same thing for the robot hand. And I'll go ahead and place these in order. So the bicep or the top of the arm needs to be on top. It'll be the forearm and then the hand. So I'll click once here to deselect everything. And now if I decide to move this looks a little bit better. All right, not too bad. The deformation here on the arm looks a little bit weird though. So I'll see if I can change that. Let's do Command Z. And we'll go back to our rig. And I'm going to adjust where the articulator is. Adjust the hand again. And go back to the transform tool. And so I'm going to keep toying with this until it makes sense. I'm going to take a look here. And this is basically how you would make sure everything is going to work out the way you'd like it. Is just jumping back and forth between rigging and the transform tool. All right, that looks pretty decent. And one of the things I know we're going to be doing is actually animating the articulation where we need it to be. And we can do that with the transform tool, and we can even add keyframes to that. So I'm going to undo that real quick. Now there's one thing I'm noticing is the arm, or the hand, actually seems to be under the head. So what I want to do is make sure that the full arm here, as well as the rest of the pieces, I'm just going to hold on my shift key. And I'm using a transform tool. I'm not really using the bones at this point. What I want to make sure is that everything is brought forward. So I'm going to hold on my Option key, and looking down at my keyboard, I will use the down arrow. And the way you think about this is the down arrow is pointing toward yourself. So we want to move the arm and everything forward in Z space. We're going to nudge that towards ourselves. So I'm going to press the down arrow once. And even though that arm is actually at a lower layer than the head, we've nudged that forward. Last but not least, let's go ahead and do the other arm. And so we'll go ahead and solo that layer and solo the left hand. And this is a little bit different because the body is actually hiding where the bicep would be. So we're just going to have the lower arm here as well as the hand. So go to my rigging tool, and again, show only what I'm working on. So I'll click Show Selected Deformer, and I'll click once at the hand there, or pretty much at the forearm, and once for the hand. We want to change our articulation a little bit. And we'll test this out. And we forgot to go ahead and bring in the hand with our arm. So I'm going to go to my layers and drag this right under the bone. Make sure it's in the right order. Now, if we look, the hand here is right behind the wrist, and we don't want that. So I'm going to click with my transform tool. And again, I'm making sure that my animate tool is off when I do this. So I'm going to nudge this in Z space forward. So hold on Option, press the down arrow. That's Alt down on PC. All right, I'll click once in my camera area to deselect everything. And now we have everything working together. All right, and we'll change the name, make sure we call this the arm bone. And make sure we unsolo everything. And so now we have our bones set up for our arms. So anytime I need to move any other bone area, I can select that particular bone and then click to show only that articulator. I can click on the tail and only show that articulator and bone deformation. So you can create bone deformations on a single layer, as well as you can set them up as if the character is hinged. But when you're doing this, you want to make sure that everything is stacked and not parented, and that's going to help you move any type of bone deformation on multiple layers.